David Farrell, second.
And yes, and I'm sorry, Kamaria Pettis-Macker from the legal department. Yes, you have to vote on that.
Okay. Let's start from the left, please, Mr. Farrell.
David Farrell, aye.
Brett Feldman, aye.
Dustin Pastor, aye.
Lynn Hurtak, aye.
Sam Walker, aye.
Thank you. The meeting minutes from September are approved. At this time, I would like to ask legal staff to confirm any ex parte communications and conflicts, please.
Good evening. Kamaria Pettis-Macker from the City Attorney's Office. Will any of the board members please state on the record whether or not they've had any ex parte communication regarding any of the items that are listed on the agenda?
David Farrell, none.
Brett Feldman, I don't see any.
Okay.
We don't need to run down the list,
Okay.
do we?
No. No. Also, will any of the board members please state whether or not they've had any conflicts of interest regarding any of the items that are on the agenda? Hearing none, thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Okay. This being said, is there any business regarding the agenda that staff would like to address?
Yes, item number 2, silent roll call. I understand that Susan Long is going to be marked absent.
Okay.
Also on the agenda this evening, VRB case 19108 failed to notice, so it has been moved to November 10th. So if anyone in the audience is here for case number VRB 19108, that is going to be heard in November. Also, if you are here for case number VRB 53, that was officially withdrawn, and if you need further information on that, please leave your name and number with Brett here, and we'll call you back and let you know who to contact regarding that project. There are no other changes to the agenda at this time.
Okay, so to clarify, if anybody's here for 3305 West Abdella Street or for 7970 Tampa Palms Boulevard, those cases will not be heard tonight. Is there any new business that staff would like to address?
No, sir.
Okay. At this time, I would like to ask staff to conduct the swear-in, please.
For all of those who wish to speak or present this evening or give public comment, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear to and affirm that you will give the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Thanks.
Chairman, if I can review some instructions for the audience. Okay. Again, good evening. Welcome to the VRB case for October 13th. If you are planning on speaking, it is very, very important we get a good sound recording. Okay, so you will have a mic at the podium. There are 2 podiums there, and if the podium was used prior to you walking up to it, there is Tampa Convention Center staff here that will wipe down the podium. If they're wiping down that podium, please step to the next podium and use that podium, and vice versa. Switch back and forth, please. There also is a mic at the lower section where the Elmo is, or the viewer. If you have information that you want to place on that viewer, please go ahead and do that. And then if you have to carry the mic with you, but please make sure you're very close to the mic. We're getting a very clear recording, okay? Watch this cue. If I'm not hearing you, then I can't hear you. So I'll let you know, okay? Also, if you have documentation that you want the board to present, new evidence that I don't have in my staff report that already has been to the board, then please bring those copies over to Brett, and he will take them up to the podium to the VRB board members. Or if you'd rather make your presentation and then enter it into the record after the fact, make sure you leave that hard copy with Brett with us tonight before you leave, okay? Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, so the first case is a continued case. It's VRB 2047 at 3707 West San Pedro Street. Is the applicant present? Yes. Okay, could we please hear the staff report again?
Yes, good evening. Roberta Mead Curry, Development and Growth Management. The case number is VRB 20-47. The address is 3707 West San Pedro Street. The applicant is seeking relief from section 27-156 to reduce the rear yard setback from 20 feet to 1 foot 9 inches, to reduce the east side yard setback from 7 feet to 2 feet 1 inch. Applicant is seeking to vest existing conditions referencing permits number BLD 16-044-2868, BLD 19-046-7911, and BLD 19-046-7911, Revision 1. The property is zoned RS50, and the Hillsborough County Property Appraiser's information is included in your packet. Land development right-of-way found it consistent. Natural resources, it did not trigger the tree and landscape code. Transportation found it consistent. Zoning found it inconsistent with the condition that applicant revise plans and resubmit to permit to update permit records referenced earlier. This is the tree and landscape comments. This is the property appraiser's information, page 1. Page 2. Again, this is the primary structure, and this is the accessory structure in question tonight. Variance map. Property in question is outlined in red, and again, all surrounding properties are RS50. West San Pedro is along here. Front of structure. View down the street. Opposite direction. This is a view of the accessory structure, the roof panels of the screen enclosure, and the distance from the eave-to-eave separation here. Another view of that. Site plan. Again, the street is here, primary structure here, pool and enclosure. This is the accessory structure here. What I'm showing you is permits, the drawings of the permits that were approved. This is the accessory structure at the required height. This was the plan presented for the screen enclosure permit, where the boundary of the yellow was the screen enclosure boundary. And we have nothing further to add to the record. The applicant has noticed properly.
Thank you. Applicant, please state your name, address, and if you've been sworn.
My name is Frank Greco, and I reside at 5440 North River Shore Drive in Tampa, and I represent the owners of the property, the current owners, Stephen and Bridget Hutzold.
And have you been sworn in?
I have been sworn in, yes.
Okay, you have 10 minutes to present.
Okay. I'm going to use the handheld mic. Can you hear me?
There's a switch on the bottom.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. A lot of the photos that you'll be seeing will be very similar to what Roberta's already presented. And I'd like to thank the board for giving us the opportunity to speak to you tonight. This variance is being requested to remedy a series of professional failures that did not disclose existing violations on the property when it was sold. So basically, the current owners purchased the property in good faith, not knowing that there had several violations on it. And the best way to describe what has happened is to go through a timeline of events. And so I will start with that now. On December 14th, 2015, there was a permit pulled by the previous owner. And this is the site plan which Roberta had already shown you that had been approved. And it had setbacks of 3 feet and 5 feet in the rear. And it was an appropriate site plan for an accessory structure. The building plans that were approved, as Roberta had shown you earlier, were these, and it shows the proper height of the building being 15 feet, which was allowed by the city code. And also it shows that it was a conditioned attic space for storage, but it was conditioned for air-conditioned storage. Going forward, on March 9th, in 2018, the Hillsborough County Property Appraiser's Office identified the property to reassess the property for future tax rolls, which would have occurred in October of that same year, in 2018. And what we had was a photograph from the property appraiser's office, which, as you can see, very difficult to tell on this map, but if you enlarge this, you would see the staircase that had been added by the previous owner without a permit. So the staircase is right here on the side, and this is the subject property right here. When they added the staircase, they also converted it to living space, and were using it as a living space for a dedicated bedroom for a family member. On October 11 of 2018, the property was listed for sale. And this is a copy of the MLS listing. And as you can see, they listed it as a detached two-car garage, which contains a 432 square foot mother-in-law suite. And this is some of the brochures from the realtor's office indicating, again, two-car garage with a mother-in-law suite. When the listing was done, they also did some photographs for publicity photos. This is one showing the aerial view. You can see the staircase was on the side or the rear of the property. And also they showed the interior of the living space of the accessory structure, which was now a bedroom. On October 14th, 2018, Bridget and Stephen Petzold, they contracted to purchase the property. An abstract of title was done just before that, the abstract of title was done in October after they contracted for the property. And then on November 6th, the construction permit was approved, and the final inspection was done with an approval, and it was not noticing the physical structure had literally been constructed not to plan. The structure had the staircase in the rear. It was 18 feet tall, and it also only had a 2.1 foot side setback. The abstract didn't return any violations on that property because the final inspection was done after the abstract was done, so it was not even recorded yet. So basically it was just a project under construction. So there was no violation detected at the time of the abstract of title. On November 6th, the permit was approved, and again, it was not noted that it had a square footage that was too much for the property. It was being used for living space. The setbacks did not meet the requirements, and also the height was too tall. On November 7th, the construction permit was issued. It was issued a certificate of completion by the building official at the time, which was Marvin Dryden, and the project was formally closed. On November 9th, 2018, the closing occurred and it transferred ownership to the new owners, the Petzolds. The title search and the home inspections also didn't detect any violations with the property. Then fast forwarding to February the 12th of 2019, the Petzolds wanted to do some upgrades to the accessory structure, and they were denied because of the violations that were detected at that time. So fast forwarding then to June 24th in 2019, the new owners had applied for a permit to install a screen enclosure over the existing pool with a covered lanai on the back. That project was approved through plan review on August the 23rd, and at that time the construction began, and it was not detected that the eave-to-eave separation was not in accordance with the city ordinance, which is 5 feet. On August the 24th, the City of Tampa inspection staff had approved the finals, and on the 25th, the new owners were issued the certificate of completion for the improvements of the project, and that was formally closed. September 7th, the city zoning department requested a revision to the variance, which is why we're here today, and the request was to include the accessory structure within the main structure setbacks, because it now would be because of the setback for the eave-to-eave separation and for the rear setback. This was a copy of the approved lanai, which is here in red, and the garage and the dwelling structure.
We can't see all of that.
Can't hear it? Okay, thank you.
We can't see all of that either.
Oh, I'm sorry. Right here. So this is the garage structure, and here's the dwelling, and this is the lanai that was constructed, the covered lanai. Screen enclosures over the pool. And for the remaining, the new owners were then issued the completion, the certificate of completion, and the project was closed out on August 25th. And then the new site plan is what Roberta had also shown you, which shows the lanai, the enclosed, the covered lanai, and the garage. There is the reduced eave-to-eave separation. The rear setback is 1.9 feet to the stairway. However, the actual building is about 5'9" away. And on the side, it's only 2.1 inches. So what we're asking for is a variance for the side setbacks and the rear setbacks for this property so that it can be included within the main structure envelopes.
You have 1 minute left.
Okay, and I'm almost finished. And these are also photographs that Roberta had shown you of the covered lanai. This section is the screen enclosure. There's the lanai's roof, and here's another eave-to-eave separation that you can see here with the facade of the accessory structure. And that's my presentation. So we would ask for your consideration to consider the variance to include this to allow the owners to enjoy the property that they purchased in good faith.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on this case? Seeing none, we will open it for board questions. Mr. Feldman.
Mr. Greco, don't go away.
Yes, sir.
So a recent suggestion that we've received is that we make sure that everyone state their hardships clearly. Can you, just for the record, state the hardship or practical difficulty that you are addressing with this variance?
Well, the hardship would be the fact that the Petzolds purchased the property without knowing of the violations that were there that were not detected by several professional agencies. One of them is the city of Tampa. There were 3 inspections and plan reviews, or there were 2 inspections and 1 plan review that was done by the city of Tampa that the information was not forthcoming. So it was not detected that there was a violation on the property, which in fact, when the realtor had listed the property for sale, they did not list it as a violation in the project or the sale. Also, the abstract of title did not have any listing of these violations that were there. It's a non-conforming structure that was built that did not even match the plan that it was built to, because the previous owner took some liabilities or some generalities, or what they did was they went ahead and increased the size of the building, used it for living space. They also set the building closer than it should have been to the east property line, and built the staircase on the back to where it would have proper access. So the hardship is the fact that in good faith, the Petzolds purchased the property and now have a property that has a cloud on its title that cannot be sold unless they disclose that. However, it was not disclosed to them when they purchased it. I can tell you that the Petzolds have no intentions of adding on to the accessory structure. They just want to be able to enjoy peacefully the property that they purchased.
I have a question for legal. When the city, if the city doesn't identify an existing non-conforming issue, can that constitute a hardship or a practical difficulty that we should address?
Kamaria Pettis-Mackle from the legal department. I'd ask that Ms. Roberta Mead just provide additional information as to how the building, that additional process actually occurred. I understand the presentation from the applicant, but I asked for Ms. Mead to provide additional information for the record about how that building process occurred.
Okay.
Okay. Roberta Mead Curry, Development and Growth Management. Basically, from what I understand from the history of the project, is they were into a revision with their screen enclosure permit, and that is when all of this came to light. So they were denied their permit for permit number 3, basically, and were scratching their head, well, what do you mean I don't have anything that's compliant? So they had to come in to this variance and review board and get the items that were missed from previous permits. That's why we've referenced all 3 of those permits in the package for you, is those permits were approved a certain way, and the previous owner built or added on or converted the property without permits and not corrected, not caught, until the new owner is now coming in trying to do what is right and getting a permit for their screen enclosure and being stopped.
But the original construction of the accessory structure was inspected and approved, and it was also wrong, right? Because it was too close on the side and it was too tall?
It was too tall, it was too much square footage, and it was too close to that one property line, yes, sir.
But that was approved in the original build application?
It was,
Permit.
the original permit had a correct height, had a correct setback, and the upstairs space was storage.
Right, but what I'm asking is that original permit that was drawn correctly and built incorrectly
Correct.
was approved by final inspection and closed out. Is that right?
It was.
Okay.
Which then brings me back to my, and again, Brett Feldman, sorry, didn't say that before. That brings me back to my original question, which is, the city has a permit that it approved that closed out, and whether or not it was built incorrectly by the prior owner, the city approved that. now it's caught that that's an issue. I'm just trying to confirm that that's an unusual scenario, we would all agree, that would constitute a hardship or a practical difficulty that we can rely upon in determining this variance.
Kamaria Pettis-Malco for the legal department. So you can take into consideration the permitting history and the process that happened to determine whether or not that is in fact a hardship. You could take into consideration that the current owners, Mr. and Mrs. Petzel, they did not create the issues that brought forth the agent here today. It was a previous owner that created the issues during another construction project. So you could take that into consideration on whether or not that is a hardship criteria, meets the hardship criteria.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Normally what we would do is we would look for a condition on the property that would give us that hardship, but that makes sense that we can consider that. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Practical. I have a question for Ms. Curry. I'm just thinking through so first of all, what is the allowable square footage that they've exceeded?
They're zoned RS 50, and the minimum square footage for an accessory structure is 750 square feet.
Minimum?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what are they at? It said 432, I assume for the livable space. Does that mean that they're over that in totality?
It's 864.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
and
over
again,
that.
on the Hillsborough Property Appraiser's record, it shows what the square footage is.
So
for
wait,
those.
did you mean to say maximum on accessory structure 750?
It's not to exceed 750 square feet,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So it's 830, 864.
864.
Okay. Okay, got that. Second question, could you do a variance just on the building separation, or is building separation something that cannot be handled through variance?
Okay, they initially, in fact, when they first noticed, and that's why we remanded or continued the case because of the re-notice requirement, they did initially ask for accessory structure setbacks. But then once we realized that the pool enclosure permit was ongoing in the middle of their VRB case, we had to kind of stop, re-look at, now the structures are connected by the pool enclosure, and now that roof to the pool enclosure has affected the accessory structure
Right.
separation eve to eve. So it was best for us to ask for the primary setbacks for the whole
Okay.
thing.
So it was more of a process issue that got us here.
Correct.
Okay, that makes sense. I hate to extend primary setbacks unless we have to, but I
Understand.
understand exactly what you just said, how we got
Understand.
here. Okay, any other questions from the board? Seeing none, you've got 3 minutes for rebuttal if you need it.
I just wanted to mention the fact that the remedy for this would then allow the Petzels to enjoy the property that they purchased in good faith, and then in the future, if and when they need to sell the property, would not have the cloud on the title of the violations that had occurred. And thank you very much for considering this request.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Without objection, we will close the public hearing and open it up for a motion or board discussion.
I'll make a comment and then I have a motion.
Okay.
So to sort of follow up on Mr. Feldman's point, I think that the fact that the city arguably improperly closed out this permit makes this situation unique and singular to the property. I know that we typically think of something that's unique and singular to the property as being like the size or shape of the property, but I think that in this case, we can also say that the fact that a permit was wrongly closed is also unique to this property. So with that in mind, I move that variance for case VRB 20-47 for the property located at 3707 West San Pedro Street be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for a reduction of the rear yard setback from 20 feet to 1 foot 9 inches, to reduce the east yard setback from 7 feet to 2 feet 1 inches, both with encroachments for eaves and gutters, based on the applicant submitting and presenting competent and substantial evidence in the record and at this public hearing that an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 27-80 of the city code, specifically that the alleged hardship or practical difficulty is unique to this property in light of the fact that the permit was wrongly closed when the property was in violation of the city code. There's a hardship or practical difficulty that does not result from the actions of the applicant. The applicant was unaware of these violations when it purchased the property, and it did so in reliance on inspections and other information that was available to it at the time. Accordingly, this was not a self-created hardship. And finally, allowing the variance would result in substantial justice being done by allowing the applicants to enjoy the property as purchased.
Thank you. Is there a second?
That was a well-thought-out motion. I'll second it.
Chairman,
Yes.
zoning did have some conditions that we needed to be added to that, please.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I amend my?
Yes.
So I move that the variance be approved as previously stated with,
It's on page 1 of the
Thank
staff
you.
report.
with the condition that the applicant revise the plans and resubmit to permitting to update the permit records referenced therein.
And will you renew your second?
This is Brett Feldman. I'll renew the second.
Thank you. And could we have a vote from the right side, please?
Sam Walker, aye.
Lynn Hertach, aye.
Dustin Pastor, aye.
Brett Feldman, aye.
David Farrell, aye.
The motion has been approved 5-0. As noted. Okay. Next case is a new case, VRB 2042, located at 5802 Interbay Boulevard. Is the applicant present? Yes. Okay, let's hear the staff report, please.
Roberta Mead Curry, Development and Growth Management, case number VRB 20-42, address is 5802 Interbay Boulevard. The applicant is seeking relief from section 27-290 to reduce the front yard setback along West Wyoming Avenue from 60 feet to 5 feet. Applicant is seeking to build a one-story accessory structure. The property is zoned RS50, residential single family, and the Hillsborough County Property Appraiser information is included in your packet. Land Development right-of-way has found it consistent. Natural Resources has found that it does not trigger the Tree and Landscape Code. Transportation has found it consistent. Zoning has found it inconsistent. Natural Resources report. Page 1, Hillsborough County Property Appraisers record. Page 2. Variance map. Again, this property is located here in red. Interbay Boulevard is here. Wyoming is along this route. This piece here is a paved street, but it is not a legal right-of-way. In fact, the city of Tampa owns that. So this property basically has a front along Interbay and a front along Wyoming. Front of the property along Interbay and looking at that access way, which is not a legal right-of-way. Again, at the front. Looking down Interbay. Other direction, down Interbay. And this is the front of that house. This is looking at the property from that right-of-way, or the area, paved area here. This is their access way. Looking back at the corner, this is Wyoming. This is the other front along Wyoming, and the accessory structure would sit behind this fence. Site plan. Again, this is inner bay, existing structure, proposed accessory structure. Again, this is a structure with a canopy and columns and an open air front porch area. Again, this is Wyoming. It's the rendering of the drawing, or the structure, sorry. Applicant has noticed properly, and I have nothing else to add to the record.
Thank you. Applicant, please state your name, address, and if you've been sworn.
Yes, I'm the agent for the applicant. My name is Gerald McCants. My address is 2114 West Walnut Street.
And you've been sworn in?
Yes, I have.
Okay, you've got 10 minutes to present.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, good evening, board and city staff. I wanted to present the unusual condition for this property. Hello? Okay. As Roberta stated, the area that is outlined in red is the property in question. The address for the property is 5802 Inner Bay Boulevard. So the frontage of the primary residence is addressed along Inner Bay Boulevard. Wyoming, West Wyoming is to the rear of the site. Here's the corner where the primary residence faces along Inner Bay Boulevard, and then angled with the eastern boundary of Elkins and then the southern boundary of West Wyoming. The site plan shows in magenta the property boundary where the primary residence sits according to RS 50, and then the rear property line abuts West Wyoming Avenue. Here's a view along West Wyoming. In this corner is where the planned accessory structure would sit. This is the rear of the primary residence that faces Inner Bay Boulevard. Here's an interior shot of that rear corner where there's a existing storage shed. It would be removed and the accessory structure would fit in the same location. Here's the proposed site plan for the accessory structure that would sit in place of where the existing storage shed is, conforming to RS 50 zoning with 5-foot setback from the property line to allow for accessory structure. The unique hardship for this property was not created by the homeowner. This was imposed by an additional front yard setback where this property was imposed with front yard setback off of Inner Bay and a front yard setback off West Wyoming, preventing any such accessory structure to be allowed to be built, because this property has 2 front yards technically and no rear yard setback. The variance was to reduce the rear yard or the existing front yard setback from West Wyoming from 60 to 5 feet to allow for accessory structure to be built. Every property in proximity is zoned RS 50 and is allowed to take full advantage of the zoning for each property that will allow for accessory structures. The property in question, the primary residence was built in 1991, And then there is two properties that face West Wyoming, one that was built in 2004 and another property that's unknown that was built. The structure over to the east was built in 1995. The other properties have addresses that face along Inner Bay. So this property is unique where it's uniquely positioned where it has two front yard setbacks, which prevents it from having any type of rights and privileges of observing RS 50 and allowing for accessory structure. The accessory structure is within the buildable square footage of 750. The square footage for the accessory structure is only 433 square feet, according to the plan here. With a exterior covered deck to the north. So in conclusion, allowing this variance will provide the homeowner with the same zoning restrictions as their adjacent neighbors and permit them to have one front yard setback already determined by the City of Tampa in the property and appraisers records of 5802 Inner Bay Boulevard. A typical rear setback would be enforced within all provisions permitted within RS 50 zoning designation. Okay.
Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes.
Would you like to just take a minute to clearly spell out the hardships? I mean, you hit them in
Sure.
the presentation, but just
Okay.
to list them.
The primary hardship is that this property is imposed with two front yard setbacks. So this property does not have a rear property boundary setback, which prevents this homeowner from building an accessory structure. That's
Okay.
the primary hardship.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on this application? Seeing none, we'll open it for board questions.
I have a question. Just to be crystal clear, the rear yard setback for RS 50 is 5 feet?
No, it's 20 feet, but for accessory structure, it's 5 feet. Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Yes.
Yep, that's what I
Sorry.
meant. Okay.
May I correct that, please?
Yes, please.
For an accessory structure, the setback for the rear is 3 feet. The side setback is 3 feet.
Okay.
Okay?
So even better. Any other questions? Seeing none, you have 3 minutes for rebuttal if you need it.
No rebuttals required. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, without objection, I'll close the public hearing and open it up for a motion or board discussion, please.
I'll make a motion.
All right.
Lynn Hertack, I'll make a motion. I move that the variance request for case VRB 20-42 for property located at 5802 Inner Bay Boulevard be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for a reduction of front yard setback along West Wyoming Avenue from 60 feet to 5 feet with an encroachment for eaves and gutters, based upon the applicant presenting competent and substantial evidence in the record and at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 27-80 of the city code, specifically that this property has in effect 2 front yards, and so that this would allow the applicant to have a backyard and the setbacks that come along with it.
Second.
And who provided that second?
David Farrell.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Let's hear a vote. Ms. Walker?
Sam Walker, aye.
Lynn Hertack, aye.
Dustin Pastor, aye.
Brett Feldman, aye.
David Farrell, aye.
Okay, your motion's been approved 5-0.
Okay. Thank you.
Next case is VRB 2048, located at 2808 West Foster Avenue. Is the applicant present? Okay. Ms. Curry, staff report, please.
All right, good evening. Roberta Mead Curry, Development and Growth Management. Case number VRB 20-48, address is 2808 West Foster Avenue. The applicant is seeking relief from section 27-290 to the eave-to-eave separation from 5 feet to 2 feet 9 inches. Applicant is seeking to build a 2-story addition to existing home where site has an existing accessory structure. The property is zoned RS60, residential single family, and the Hillsborough County Property Appraiser information is included in your packet. Land Development right-of-way has found it consistent. Natural Resources has found that it did not trigger the Tree and Landscape Code. Zoning has found it inconsistent. Copy of the Natural Resources report. Page 1, Hillsborough County Property Appraiser. Page 2. Variance map. Again, the property is located here in red. West Foster Avenue is here. The surrounding properties are RS60. It's the front of the property. Looking down Foster Avenue. Another direction down Foster Avenue. This is very light, so let me see what I can do here. Okay, site plan. Again, this is the front of the house here, driveway coming in, existing structure. This is the existing accessory structure here, and this is where the addition is proposed. The eave-to-eave separation is within this area here. Again, existing house, and first floor, second floor. This is the proposed addition coming off the back of the area here. Again, second level of that addition, and then the roof plan of that addition. Elevations. This is the addition. And this is probably a crucial dimension here. Again, you're seeing to the left of that drawing the additions to the house. This is the existing accessory structure, and this is the dimension here that they're asking relief for, which is 2 feet 9 inches. The applicant has noticed properly. I have no other information to add to the record.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Curry. Applicant, please step forward. Please state your name, address, and if you've been sworn.
Name is Russell Ollinger at 2808 West Foster Avenue, Tampa, Florida, 33611, and I have been sworn in.
Okay, you got 10 minutes to present.
Thank you. The information that she was showing you, that last drawing is actually probably the most critical one. We have the structure in the back, which was built 8 years ago as a secondary structure, and it is where the new structure is going to go. That easement is eave to eave, a little over 5 feet from wall. It's like 5.5 feet from wall to wall, but where the eaves hang over is going to be reduced to 2 feet 9 inches, and the big critical component of that, there's two things that we want to bring out to the attention, is that the height differences, they're not on the horizontal with each other. There is roughly 22 to 23 feet difference between those two eave overhangs. The other component is that these two eaves are internal to our property. They are not hanging over the side or to somebody else's property that might be an obstruction or might be a nuisance in terms of visual aesthetics of the area. What we're here for is, my wife is over here as well, and we've been in the process on this project for 2 years, stepping through a lot of landmines, having never done the process before, this being hopefully our last one. But this easement issue causes us concern, because in order to build the property the way we would like to make it look like it's a part of the existing home, that it wasn't an add-on where you can clearly see you have a separate structure. Our whole goal is to make it look like this is the way it was built from the very beginning. And in doing so, this causes a problem where we can't have an easement on the new addition. At the same time, it's going to cause us a hardship where we have to remove the existing easement on the secondary structure that's 22 feet below it. Now, we've worked with our architect, and we've even spoken with some of the city officials on multiple options on how we could possibly avoid this route. And the long and the short of it is that there was no option that did not incur significant extra cost. One of those costs comes down to having to chop off half of the roof eave on the secondary structure. That secondary structure is about 40 feet long. The first 20 feet of it is where the new will overlap before the secondary structure continues on. In order to account for this variance problem, we would have to lop off the first 20 feet of the roof of the overhang on the secondary structure. And then you have an aesthetics problem where you've got no roof here, and then a roof continues down the rest of the distance of that secondary structure. So when looking at what the cost would be on redoing the roof there, and it was not simply just lopping off the edge of the easement, it was redoing the entire roof structure in order to have something that was compliant with code, because once you lopped off the end of it, then you start dealing with hurricane attachment issues with the roof. So it was no longer simply just adding the cost of our addition, it was adding the cost of redoing an entire roof line to account for what is essentially 8 inches of easement on either side, the existing structure and the new structure together, or maybe about a foot or so on either side. That reduces that 5 feet down to the 2 feet 9 inches that we're requesting from you today. So the hardship is significant in order for us to move forward with this project. It is our first home in Tampa. Hopefully it's our only home. We're building this addition so we can have family move in. We've got elderly parents that we're looking to be able to take care of. And this addition is critical to allowing us to be able to do that in the foreseeable future, when one of our parents is actually probably going to be doing that in the next 2 to 3 years. So we just had a baby in the house and we're running out of room. This addition is the only avenue for us, because there's no other properties in the area that we can afford. The addition is the affordable route for us. So that's why we're here today, is to discuss what we need, what we're looking for, what the hardship is. And we have gone through significant redesigns trying to figure out how to make this work. Every one of them added 60, 80 grand minimum, some were as much as 100 grand to the cost of this. We even looked at doing I forget what it's called, you do a covered archway between the two buildings, so you could adjoin them as a single building. But that then introduced all new problems in terms of variance setbacks, because you have a single structure now. And that single structure cannot be within 3 feet of the property lines. It also added enormous cost to having to restructure the secondary roof on that secondary structure, because in order to meet the roof line of the first floor of the new building, we would have to raise the wall up significantly to meet a covered archway that would be 8 feet above the actual secondary structure. So we have we really went through a lot of hoops to try and get this, and in the end, our original design is the one that actually makes the most sense. It's the least invasive, it's the least costly, and at the same time, it allows us to keep the aesthetics of the home, making it look like this is the way the house was built originally versus looking like it's an add-on. If you all have I wish I was a little bit more better prepared. I've never done this before, so I see other people came with agents and representation, and kind of wish we'd done that now. Maybe we would have had consulted somebody on this. We didn't know the process, but please take that into consideration that first time doing this. So that's our case.
Does that conclude your presentation?
It does.
Okay, I'd like to ask if you could attempt to state the hardships again, and I'll clarify that financial considerations are not a hardship for a variance. So we don't take into account anything related to cost. It's more a question of the physical attributes of the property or the conditions that exist, whether or not they were created by you or were existing, and along those lines. There are 5 specific criteria that are in your application. If you'd like, we could see if there's questions, and you can take a look at that and maybe address it in the question section.
The first part of your question, I will consider the second part, but the first part of your question, the other hardship is that by altering our designs, we're creating, we're devaluing our home to a certain degree by in our property and our real estate value in the area, because we're going to have a lopsided looking building structures connecting into one another. It's not going to look like it's a part of the original build. So that is a secondary component of what is the hardship, is trying to keep our home aesthetic as we're, new homes are coming up in the community, and we're trying to keep a standard with it and not look like we're, we jigsawed a puzzle together. So that is one of the other components of it, just trying to keep the aesthetics of the home and the property to make it look like a beautiful home. It belongs in the neighborhood. In terms of the second component, what you mentioned, I could take a look at some of those and readdress those. I guess my novice lack of experience has left me a little unprepared for some of that, so I appreciate the referral.
Okay. So let's take a minute then and see, does anybody in the audience wish to speak on this case? Looks like no. So then we'll move into board questions.
You just give me a moment here.
Yeah, sure. Take a look at it.
Quick.
So the reason I mention that is because those 5 criteria you're looking at are all that we base this decision on, and that's what we're bound to. Even the question of property value is still a question of financial interest. So take a look at those. The way we look at it is the addition doesn't have to happen. So if the addition's going to happen, what about that addition or the property warrants a variance? And if criteria is not met, then maybe the addition does not occur. So it's not so much a question about how does the addition going to look or the value of it, but can it be done? And if so, why does it need a variance? So in that regard, and looking at those criteria, what would you say?
No, thank you for the explanation as well. Give me one last second to read this last component here.
It actually listed your architect as your agent, so I was surprised when you said that you were the owner. I thought that he might be presenting for you.
We've been in constant conversation with our architect about this, and I wasn't even aware it was an option.
Okay.
It wasn't something that he discussed that he could be here on our behalf. If he was, I would gladly have him, because he's much more experienced and knowledgeable in the subject.
And you know, the other alternative you have is you could always request a continuance if you wanted more time to prepare and come back. It just means you would delay either a month. Do we have room on the November?
November has 9 cases.
So we've got one spot left on November. You don't have to do that. I'm just saying that's an option that you could consider if you felt like you needed more time.
I appreciate that, and I think I'll take you up on that. We've been waiting a year for this. I would hate for my inexperience or inability to present this properly to put a kibosh on this. So I'll take an extra month and talk to my architect, and maybe next time we'll have a representation here for us who actually knows the lingo and knows how to properly look at this and present it better than us.
So
Can Ms. Curry just state on the record what's the date of the November meeting?
November 10th.
Okay, so I hear the, Kamaria Pettis-Mackle from the City Attorney's Office, I hear the applicant asking for a continuance. So, and if the board is going to consider a continuance, I'd ask for the motion to state a specific date.
okay.
Mr. Chair, I would like to move, Brett Feldman, I would like to move to continue case VRB 20-48 to the November 10th to allow the applicant additional time to consider its hardships.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Samantha Walker, second.
Thank you.
And can we vote on the motion?
Yes.
Sam Walker, aye.
Lynn Hurtak, aye.
Dustin Pastor, aye.
Brett Feldman, aye.
David Farrell, aye.
Okay, so this case has been continued to November, what was the date? 10th?
November 10th
10th.
at 6:30 PM.
Okay, thank you very much for your time and your guidance on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next case is VRB 2049, located at 511 South Willow Avenue. Is the applicant present? Yes. Okay, Ms. Curry, staff report, please.
Okay. Roberta Mead Curry, Development and Growth Management. Case number is VRB 20-49. Case address is 511 South Willow Avenue. Applicant is seeking relief from section 27-156 to reduce the vested rear yard setback of 20 feet to 5 feet 1. Sorry, let me correct that. To reduce the rear yard setback of 20 feet to 5.1 feet. Applicant is seeking to rebuild new exterior open stairs to second level. The property is zoned RS50. The Hillsborough County Property Appraiser information is included in your packet. Right-of-way has found it consistent. Natural Resources has stated it does not trigger the Tree and Landscape Code. Transportation has found it consistent. Zoning has found it inconsistent. Copy of the Natural Resources report. Property Appraiser, page 1. Property Appraisers, page 2. Variance map. Property in question here outlined in red. Willow Avenue is here. There's a PD next door, RM24, another PD here, and RS50 in through here. Site plan. Again, Willow Avenue, West de Leon. Primary structure. The addition of the stairs is back in this area here. View along the front. Along Willow. This is the side yard along de Leon. Looking down de Leon. This is a location of the rear wall, and the stairs would be in this area here. This is some proposed drawings of the stairwell. Again, it's open air. Close up. Applicant has noticed properly, and I have nothing else to add to the record.
Thank you. Could you please state your name and address, and if you've been sworn?
Yes, my name is Linda Smith. My address is 511 South Willow Avenue, Tampa, Florida 33606, and I have been properly sworn.
Okay, great. You've got 10 minutes to present your case.
I have a
Okay.
PowerPoint presentation. So first of all, I wanted to restate my hardship for you, that this is a safety issue to allow better egress to the second floor of my home in the event of an emergency. It's unique because the lot was originally one lot and then subdivided years later. And so normally I would have enough space to just put a staircase in the back of my house and I wouldn't need a variance. But because the lot was subdivided, both of our homes are non-conforming. And I only have 13 feet between my home and the fence and my neighbor, so therefore I needed to apply for a variance. This is a unique position because most other homes in the neighborhood are built on a standard lot. This will allow me to not face the hardship, to allow me to stay in my home. The previous applicant mentioned about elderly parents moving in. Well, I'm the elderly parent in this case, and so my son would be moving in the future. I did not cause this hardship. I did not subdivide it, and I know my neighbors they're present here, have sent in a letter saying that they do not agree with this, and so I wanted to address that. This is, of course, the front of my house and the side of my house where the stairs would go. This is what the stairs currently look like on the inside of my house in order for me to go upstairs. They're small, they're cramped. In the event of a fire, there will be only one way to get out, which is through this window that you're looking out. And I'd have to crawl down a fire escape ladder. And that's another view from the bottom, looking down from upstairs. This is what I put together for you to show you. This is just a map within 2 blocks of my home, because my neighbors have stated that single-family homes don't need a second staircase, and single-family homes in our neighborhood do not do that. The purple star is my house. The yellow stars are all single-family homes that have a second additional outside staircase, and the green dots are just other homes that have auxiliary structures that have staircases or possibly staircases in their own home. So I wanted you to take a look at some of these houses in case this is a concern. This house is a block from my house. It was just built in the last year. It's over $1 million home. There's a back staircase. They also have an interior staircase. This is the house right next door, 509 South Willow. As you can see, there's a staircase, their auxiliary structure, but it's all connected, so it's one single-family home. That staircase, if you can see on the bottom of that yellow block on the left-hand slide, there's a patio umbrella. That's my neighbor's yard. So they're already looking at a staircase right in front of them. This is about 3 houses down on De Leon, the same situation. The lot was subdivided. The lot on the left is like my house. It's facing on Oregon. It's got a back staircase and an inside staircase. The house to the right of it is a second subdivided lot, totally owned by someone different, also outside staircase. This is about 2 blocks from my house, another house built in the 30s. As you can see, top right-hand corner, outside staircase. And they also have an inside staircase. So I think that kind of points to the fact that this is not an exception. On the historic district, a block south of us, and by the way, I'm not in the historic district, there's another neighbor, in the 600 block. They've got, as you can see in the left-hand picture, that's the main structure, outside staircase and inside staircase. The right-hand picture is their supplementary, their additional garage apartment type of thing with an outside staircase. That's just within a couple houses of me. On South Willow, which is, again, historic zone RS50, brand new house on the left, built a brand new house, outside structure. The house on the right is on the corner of Willow and Swan. It's part of the Hyde Park Presbyterian property. The pastor lives there now as a single-family home. You'll see right by the chimney, outside staircase. This is also on 609 South Willow and so forth, 605 South Willow. You can see these outside staircases all over. This is across the street from my neighbor on De Leon, outside staircase going to a garage apartment. On the corner of Horatio and Willow, 1 block away, about a 10-year-old structure, outside staircases to the main structure and the auxiliary structure. And then these are just to show you, again, I only did a 2-block radius. I did not go all over the place, just to show you how many outside staircases there are directly in our neighborhood. So I'd just like to restate my hardship, that the purpose of these staircases is a safety issue. I cannot have my son and my granddaughter up in a wood frame house built in 1917 without having a second way to escape in the event of a fire. And that's the end of my presentation.
All right, thank you very much.
Chairman,
Yes,
I do have 2 more items to add to the record.
okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot something too.
Go ahead.
You go.
I don't have them with me, but there's 3 other letters that were sent by the other neighbors on 509 South Willow and 611. So the 2 people on either side of me have both sent letters of support, as well as another neighbor on 611 South Willow, all saying that they have no objection to this staircase.
Okay, great.
Those were not entered into the record, but I think they've been entered in recently.
Okay. I do have 1 letter of opposition from Susanna Fenhagen and Anthony Morrison. Their address is 1303 West De Leon Street. I do believe they're here tonight to add, to speak to you this evening. I do have also a letter of support from 511, from Alessandra
That's 509 South Willow?
Mazzacari, 509 South Willow Avenue is her address. And we did receive 2 other letters of support, which I do not have with me tonight. I apologize.
Okay, thank you. You still have 3 minutes if you need it.
Well, I did want to also add something in, and that is that my neighbors are going to tell you that, you know, single-family homes used to be around and then they were converted, you know, and whatever. I understand their feelings, and I understand, but this started out, I've lived here, by the way, I've owned the same house for 43 years and raised my family there. When I bought my home, it was a single-family neighborhood. I faced 2 houses. I now face a wall and 25 condos. Next door to me, there were 3 houses. I now have two 3,000 square foot townhouses and 8 more townhouses. So the argument that we want to keep this a single family neighborhood is long gone. It started out as a single family neighborhood. I've lived here 43 years. They've lived there 5 or less than 5. And they haven't seen the changes that I have seen, but trust me, it started out as a single family, and through no fault of my own, I've had to adjust over and over and over again. The condos next to me, the duplex next to me, is 35 feet high. I used to be able to look across my neighborhood. Now everything is blocked. This is what happens. You know, progress comes along, things get built. I'm not asking for, you know, anything unusual other than a staircase.
Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Then, is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on this case? All right, one of you please come forward. Your choice. Please state your name, address, and whether or not you've been sworn.
Susanna Fenhagen, You need me to take this off?
Can we take masks off at the
You
podium?
could just speak closer to the microphone. Yep.
All right, Susanna Fenhagen, and I live at 1303 West De Leon Avenue with my husband, Anthony Morrison, and I have been sworn.
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you for letting me speak this evening, letting us speak this evening. I have lived in Hyde Park for 56 years. I know it well. I have lived within blocks of where we are currently located. We've been in our current house for 5 years. Linda's house is on the tax records and the property appraisers as a single-story, one-story home. It is not listed. She has had it for 40-some years and paid taxes on it as a one-story home. She has internal stairs going to the second story, which has never been declared, and she is now requesting that she put a secondary set of stairs in to a floor that is going to be used as a full second story. She says that it's only been used for storage in recent years, but she wants to put in another set of stairs in case of an emergency. Despite what she has shown you, most of the houses in Hyde Park, unless you get into over 3,000 square feet, have only one inside staircase. A lot of the pictures that she's shown you this evening were garage apartments originally with another piece of property that were subsequently separated, or they were the stairs to the condominiums that are adjacent to us. We have a small house that was originally part of that total parcel that she said. And yes, we have seen changes to the neighborhood. Not all of them are good. Linda talks about those changes that are right adjacent to her. She had the opportunity to object to those. I'm here this evening because I don't want to see the neighborhood go backwards. I think putting an exterior staircase on her house is unnecessary to access a floor that she has never claimed on the tax records. And she has already started to landscape for that on the side. The gas company has been there to allocate, which would indicate additional improvements that she's intending to put in over the years.
30 seconds, please.
It would be our hope that this would be denied and that you would not allow her that additional. She could approve or improve the staircase, the internal staircase. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. You state your name, address, and if you've been sworn.
Members of the board, good evening. My name is Anthony Morrison. I live at 1303 West De Leon, which is directly west of the house requesting the variance. And I'll just follow up with what Susan
And have you
said.
been sworn in, please?
I'm sorry, I have been sworn in.
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. We live in the house directly west of the Willow house on De Leon, and we currently have a request on the variance to reduce the rear yard from 20 feet to 5 feet, which would be a 15-foot staircase. I measure the setback to be approximately 13 feet instead of 20 feet. And if there's a 15-foot staircase, that would bring some of it onto our property. Also, there is currently there's a window up on the second floor. One would have to build a door to access the proposed staircase. And with the other points that Susan has brought out, I request that the variance not be granted. Thank you. I give the rest of my time.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience who wishes to speak on this case? Seeing none, you've got 3 minutes for rebuttal.
Okay, first of all, the upstairs, whether it's on the tax rolls, I have no control over that.
I'm sorry. We're supposed to do board questions before rebuttal.
Oh, I'm
So let's
sorry.
ask you some questions, and then we'll get
Okay,
back to that.
thank you.
My apologies. So board questions, I'll start. Could you show us the site plan and kind of point out what you're doing, like a floor plan? Where's your property and where the stair is going to be and where's the building? And
I submitted all that, but
Right.
I didn't bring that because I thought that was part of the package that you were given by staff.
Okay. Roberta, could you throw it up, please?
Yes.
So basically, there's a second store window, and there's an air conditioning unit there because it's always been air conditioned. And that window would be taken out and a door would be put in. And there would be a landing right there, and then there would stairs go down to the ground floor. And the way they're currently constructed, I was trying to put them towards the front of the property to be less intrusive to my neighbors. So I had them switch back, and that's why they're 8 feet instead of just 4 feet. If I do a single staircase, I could do 4 foot. But that would mean that I'd have to make it longer, and it would go parallel to their property more, which I thought would be more intrusive for them. And I was trying to do whatever was going to be best for them.
Okay. And just, can you give me the history on if this house was 2-story when you bought it, or if it was added on?
Yes, it's always been 2-story. In fact, in 1979, the city of Tampa, along with HUD and the Neighborhood Improvement Association, came to my house and helped me finance or secured a contractor for me to renovate the house. I bought it in 1977. They came in and put air conditioning in. They upgraded all the electric, the plumbing, and everything, and they did the entire upstairs as well. So I don't know why. I mean, they put drywall up there and insulation and everything. I don't know why they didn't change it from a second story, but it's very common. Kitty corner from my house, there's a home that's also listed as 1 story, and I've been up to their upstairs as well. It was very common to call a 1-story house during those times, unless it was a square, completely squared off house. Because of the pitch of the roof, you know, it's what we'd call a loft area or a half story, or I don't even know what do they call it, but it's a second story with full headroom and a full staircase.
Okay, and then I've got one question for Roberta, and then maybe I'll stop asking questions. It says the request is for a reduction from 20 feet in the rear down to 5. It looks like from this survey that there's nowhere near 20 feet in the rear. Is this maybe a result of the lot split or something that didn't get updated, or can you give me some insight into what we're looking at?
Yeah, yes. Again, Roberta, Mead Curry Development and Growth Management. Basically, the code states that the relief is from section 27-156. So the required setback for a standard size lot is a 20-foot rear setback. So we must ask for that, even though it does not exist. And in fact, when she first noticed, we had her notice from what was existing, the 13-something feet, to what she's asking for, and we realized that was incorrect. So she actually had to be continued and renotice and do it per the required setback of 20 feet. And we asked for the reduction from that.
Okay. So let's say in a scenario where the stair is not approved, are we not in a position where we would need to vest this structure because it was previously approved as part of the lot split?
Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the legal department. I think, are you asking to do something that's not on this application?
No. I'm saying if the stair is not approved, would we end up with a non-conforming rear yard?
Basically, it is a non-conforming lot and a non-conforming structure.
Right, it is now as
Yes.
created by the lot split,
Right.
but if this variance is not approved, we still won't meet 20 feet.
Correct.
Is that our concern at all?
No.
Okay. Other questions?
When was the lot split? Brett Feldman, I'm sorry. When was the lot split?
I don't know, I'm sorry. I've lived there since 1977. It was
Before
split
you.
when I got there, yes.
Before you, okay.
I believe it was sometime in the 30s. I'm not really sure. The house was built in 1917, and I acquired it in 1977.
Any other questions?
I do have 2 items to add to the record, Chairman.
Okay.
Okay, the applicant did profess that she had 2 other letters of support, and we do have that in your packet. I just did not have the hard copy tonight, I apologize. So the address was 608 South Willow Avenue from Apolline Towie. and David Lorick at 601 South Willow Avenue, both in support.
Okay. Are any of these neighbors' addresses being mentioned your immediate neighbors?
Yes, David Lorick. So I'm on the corner of Willow and De Leon. So directly behind me is the Morrison plot. To the right of me, still on Willow, is David Lorick. So he's across De Leon from me, but right next to me. So his side yard faces my backyard. So he would still be affected because he would still see it. Sure. And then on the other side, which is 509 South Willow, which is the Trinity Properties in Alessandro, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, that is 509 next to me. That's also next to me and the people behind me.
So the Morrisons that just spoke are
Yes.
immediately behind you and
Yes.
would be looking at the stair from their backyard?
Well, there's a fence there, so they wouldn't be able to see it unless they really looked up. I mean, they can already see the window up there, so they'd be able to see a window with a staircase now
But their
instead.
backyard faces this proposed stair location?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Actually, their side yard, excuse me, their side yard faces it.
Okay.
Yeah, their side yard.
Yeah, that's where a site plan would be helpful.
Yeah. I'm sorry I didn't give you that, but I thought that it was in the package you got from the city.
It probably was, I just don't have it. Is there any other questions from the board? Seeing none, now 3 minutes for rebuttal.
Okay. So the upstairs room was always used as a playroom for my children or a craft room and also for storage. It's the original building. There's been no changes to it. There's been no change to the original structure. So whether it's 1 or 2 stories, I don't know. The landscaping that they mention on the side yard is not me trying to get away with anything. I had my driveway repaved, and I used the leftover pavers to make a path on the side of my yard. The gas company was out because my sprinklers were being repaired. There, like, again, you can see there's a window air conditioning unit in the front of the house and the back of the house. It's always been air conditioned. It's always been used as space. And I don't know what else to tell you. But I appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right. Then, without objection, we will close the public hearing and open it up for motion or board discussion. How you guys feeling?
I mean, I'm willing to make a motion.
Okay, Mr. Farrell?
Okay, and I'm willing to make the the approval motion without conditions.
Okay.
So, let me get it to the right page here. Okay. I move for the variance request for case VRB 20-49 for the property located at 511 South Willow Avenue, be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for a variance to a rear yard variance reduction from 20 to 5.1 to accommodate the construction of an exterior set of stairs based upon the applicant presenting competent and substantial evidence in the record, and at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 2780 of the city code, specifically that the homeowner is simply trying to construct an amenity to the house. The condition of her lot as a result of lot split, which is a hardship that she did not create, has put her in the position where she's having to ask for a variance to enter into what typically would be that setback.
I'll second if you'll allow me to make a minor modification.
Yes, sir. Clean it up. I understand.
I just would add that the existing, I think you covered it, but that the existing structure is non-conforming, that the homeowner has showed through competent substantial evidence that there are numerous other properties making the stairway consistent with the neighborhood, and that the hardship that the homeowner has stated is safety for better egress from the second story of the home.
And I'll accept that amendment.
Great. Brett Feldman, I'll make the second.
Thank you. Ms. Walker?
Sam Walker, aye.
Lynn Hurtak, aye.
Dustin Pastor, aye.
Brett Feldman, aye.
David Farrell, aye.
Thank you so much.
Your motion's been approved 5-0.
Thank you.
Okay. Now for our final and likely longest case of the evening, VRB 2052, located at 4941 West Melrose Avenue North. Is the applicant present? Yes. All right, let's hear the staff report, please. Ms. Curry, she is gathering some documents.
Ready?
Yes.
Roberta Maid Curry, Development and Growth Management. Case number VRB 20-52. The address is 4941 West Melrose Avenue. The applicant is seeking relief from section 27156 to increase the allowable height of 35 feet to 52 feet. Maintain the reduction of the west rear yard from 20 feet to 14 feet, and reduction of the front yard from 25 feet to 16.1 feet, which was previously approved through variance granted in 1993. Applicant is seeking to construct new multi-story, single-family residence per the new FEMA base flood elevation. The property is zoned RS 100. The Hillsborough County property appraiser information is included in your packet. Right-of-way is found it consistent. Natural Resources has found it did not trigger the tree and landscape code. Transportation is consistent, and zoning is inconsistent. Okay. Natural Resources report. Hillsborough County property appraiser, page 1. Page 2. And again, what you're seeing on this document is the house that no longer exists. The house shown on this document has been demolished. Variance map. Again, the property is here. This is West Melrose with a cul-de-sac. And this is obviously the bay, water. And the surrounding zoning is RS 100. This is the property as it exists today, looking from the cul-de-sac view. I'm just going to go around the cul-de-sac, basically looking down the cul-de-sac, down West Melrose. Property next door. Again, this is the site plan of the house that is demolished. But again, this is the cul-de-sac. This is the body of water here and here, seawall. Same drawing. This is the proposed site plan. Again, cul-de-sac. This would be the garage entry into the house, seawall, proposed structure here, and I believe there's a pool here. Section of the home. You also have information in your packet that was the base flood elevation for the previous home. This is the FEMA flood information, and the applicant will explain that in more detail. But again, this is the proposed property here. And it's very hard to see this, but maybe they have other documentation. The proposed property is in this vicinity, but the information that's pertinent is here, which talks about what the current flood information has to be. I can't get that to zoom in. Yeah, we'll go over that. This is the updated section showing you, come on. The existing base flood elevation at 9 feet, where the current standards will be at 15. The applicant has noticed properly. You have been given a packet of information. That package of information contains 9 opposition letters plus a petition, and I'll read off the names and addresses of the persons who have expressed opposition. I have a letter received from Roderick Mann. I don't see an address stated on, yes, I do. 4928 West Melrose Avenue. I have a letter of opposition received from D. Healy. Their address is David and Marilyn Healy. Their address is 4938 West Melrose Avenue South. I have a letter of opposition from Mary Frances Kelly. Her address is 4925 West Melrose Avenue South. I have a letter of opposition. Sorry. I need to be placing these on the screen, so forgive me. So. Okay, this letter is from Miss Mary Frances. Page 2. This letter is from David and Marilyn Healy. This letter, it's 3 pages, is from Roderick Mann. I don't want to get caught up here. Okay, I have a letter of opposition from Joan McCarthy. And their address is 4939 West Melrose Avenue North. I have a letter of opposition from Courtney and Ann Anderson. Their address is 4940 West Melrose Avenue North. I have a letter from Maritza May, and their address is 4929 West Melrose Avenue South. I have a letter of opposition from Steve Cahal. And their address is 4942 West Melrose Avenue. I have a letter of opposition from Harry Costello. The address is 4922 West Melrose Avenue South. I have a letter of opposition from Shelley Sharp. Her address is 4917 West Melrose Avenue North. And I have a petition signed by 23 signatures with a statement in the front. And I will show you page 1. And page 2. The applicant has noticed properly, and I have nothing else to add to the record. If you want me to show you any other, the letters again, I'd be happy to do that, but they were included in the packet I gave you a little bit ago. That concludes my report.
Okay. Applicant, please state your name, address, and whether or not you've been sworn.
Steve Michelini, 2407 Sunset Drive. Yes, I've been sworn. Before I begin my presentation, I would like for the staff to confirm that the letters of opposition relate to the height only and not the other two variances that are being requested.
Roberta, have you guys read them all, and can you actually validate that comment?
I've read most of them, but some of them came in today. I mean,
Okay.
so I can read through them and report back to you before we close.
Okay. I have a feeling we might hear about it anyway. You got 10 minutes.
Thank you, sir. On your screen is the proposed site plan, and I have outlined and circled the variances from the front yard from 25 to 16.1, and from the rear yard from 20 to 14 feet. These were previously approved under variance in 1993, and I have a copy of the original approved variance that was granted at that time under BOA 93-114. And it was moved by Mr. Connor, seconded by Mr. Hamilton, that the appeal was reduced the front yard setback from 25 to 16.1, and to reduce the rear yard from 20 to 14, and then the motion was granted. The only reason I bring that to your attention is that because we're requesting to revest what was previously approved. And the reason that that's coming back to you is because it is a second-story addition, and the original structure was removed from the site. We have an extremely irregular, let me go back to the site plan. We have an irregular site, and we're constrained by the fact that we're at the dead end of a cul-de-sac. And so this arc of the 16 feet follows the arc of the cul-de-sac. We also have water and seawalls here and seawalls here. And previously, we were in a flood zone classified as an A9, which Roberta pointed out. We are now in a classification of a 15 foot elevation, VE 15, and we have a letter confirming our elevation by David Jennings from the City of Tampa Building Department. And I just received this today. We've been working on this with the staff for quite a while, and they've just confirmed that the updated coastal flood maps are to be adopted in January of 2021. So any structure built before January 2021 will be considered to be non-compliant and subject to much higher flood rate insurance. The staff has a copy of this, and it was also sent to the city attorney so that she would have an original and it wouldn't be just me saying this. The new elevation of the property will be VE 15 and AE 12, and will be developed in a VE zone. So for those of you that don't recognize those initials, that's a velocity zone. So everything on the lower level has to be either breakaway or completely open for the flood waters to pass through. The proposed structure will be classified in the 15. Structure will be required the lowest horizontal structure component to be at a base elevation of 15 plus the design element, which is 16 established by the Florida Building Code. The current flood zone is 9 and the elevation is 10. The area below the elevation of 16 must be garage parking, minor storage with any walls being designed to break away, and so all living and habitable space must be above that. So what we have done in the interim is reduce the request from the 52 feet to 44 feet. We didn't have the confirmation on the flood zone elevation, so we are currently at +6, almost 6.5. And so what we're requesting is an additional 9 feet that will include the garage area, the first living floor area, and the second floor area. And then it will also include up to the rooftop with the parapet.
Can I just clarify, when you said you're at 6, you mean the existing ground elevation?
Yes, sir. Existing grade is plus, it's about 6.6. But when we finish excavating, getting the site prep, we'll be right at 6 feet. This is another diagram. This is another elevation. This is the east elevation, basically showing you at 44 feet, we are compliant with the request going from 35 to 44. Now the elevation drawing that that Roberta had is a little bit different now because we dropped. There was a covered canopy on the top for patio, and we've deleted that from the plans. So now you have the roof elevation here, and it's going up to 44 feet.
No, he'll switch your mic. He'll switch your mic. You're
There
good.
we go. So we have an irregular lot. We're trying to revest the existing variance that was granted in '93. We're looking at those variances. Hopefully that you'll see that there is no increase in the floor area that would cause a difficulty there. We have the same site constraints that we had in 1993. The rear yard setback is along the hardened seawall, which is, we're requesting from 20 to 14. And again, the height that we're now requesting is the reduction from, or an increase from 35 feet to 44 feet. And again, the letter in the record will now show that the City of Tampa plans to enforce that. And if you're submitting plans now, in my conversation with them today, they indicated that they will be red marking those plans and making the owner sign a waiver acknowledging that they will not be in compliance come January. The difficulty that actually results from the narrow frontage, the irregular shape, and the location and proximity to the flood zone. And again, we had a smaller portion of the site that was covered by the previous FEMA maps, and now approximately 75–80% of the site is now covered by the FEMA regulations, and it increased the minimum height elevation for all of that. It is unique, and these conditions were not created by the owner. The change in the FEMA maps wasn't created by them. The shape of the lot wasn't created by them. And it does have some practical difficulties in development in order to meet those various requirements. It does not substantially interfere with anyone else, doesn't injure their health, safety, or welfare. They have no particular standing in terms of what FEMA is requiring us to do. The setbacks are the same as what previously existed from the other house that was there. The variance is in harmony with the comprehensive plan. It never intended to compromise or to place a hardship on a homeowner or a property owner in redeveloping the site. And the practical difficulties that would result from this would be extreme. It would, in fact, deny this property owner the right and the ability to develop the site in a reasonable manner. I've heard a lot of discussion. I did reach out to some of the neighbors and talk to them. And their issue mainly was related to the height. And I had also discussed with them the fact that within a very short period of time, you're going to have regulations which will apply citywide, not just in this area, that will force you to elevate the height of your homes and the base elevation. Now, could you bring in fill and mound it up as some of the property owners have done in other parts of the city? Yes, you could.
1 minute.
But that wouldn't really meet the spirit of the intent of the code. So I think that we have met the criteria as established by the Variance Review Board and the code. We are in compliance with all of those provisions. These are not self-created hardships, and they will not injure the rights of others. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I just wanted to clarify one thing before we get into the audience. You're proposing an alternate plan tonight that takes the 35-foot allowance and adds to it the 9-foot FEMA requirement.
Yes, sir.
For a total of 44 feet.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So we're not asking for anything other than what the FEMA regulation would require us to do.
Thank you. So does that conclude your presentation?
It does.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on this case? Please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's just start on the far, this side, and we'll work over. My left. Please state your name, address, and whether or not you've been sworn.
Good evening, Marilyn Healy, 4938 West Melrose Avenue South, also representing the Stony Point Civic Association tonight. Good evening.
And have you been sworn in?
Yes, sir.
Okay, 3 minutes.
In essence, the primary justification for these variance requests are based on the FEMA regs and the 1993 variance. That was 27 years ago. We've had a new zoning code and a new comp plan since then. Respectfully, the applicant has failed to provide any competent substantial evidence that the project meets the variance criteria. The city's own zoning official has deemed this request inconsistent. Keywords are unique, singular, or issues caused and not suffered by those in common with other properties. and it certainly doesn't result as a self-created hardship is not something that an applicant just goes forward and does. And in this case, the FEMA map changes in the elevations apply to everybody that's developing in that area, whether you're redeveloping or you just bought a house and tore it down like the applicant did 2 months ago. And now they're being forced to comply with the FEMA regulations, just like the rest of us. Conclusory statements that the lot size is unique, that it's a platted lot and it's in a cul-de-sac, we all face that. That's our zoning code. That's our zoning conditions. Again, our neighborhoods, the Culberth Isles and Stony Point, we consist of older homes. 1950s to newly constructed, one-story houses to 3. The proposed height, even with reduction, and the mass are inappropriate and inconsistent with the county code and comp plan. I based my numbers based on the height of 52 feet. It's 50% and 32 for the front yard setback and 30% for the rear yard setback. There's no homes in our neighborhood that are that high. They certainly realized the application of this ordinance and the FEMA regulations when they bought the property 2 months ago. This is a perfect example of a self-created hardship. Allowing variances of these magnitudes creates a very dangerous precedent for our neighborhoods. We want to maintain the quality, harmony, and consistency of what the city of Tampa has allowed us to develop over the years. We request you please deny this. And the other thing that Mr. McAlee brought up,
30 seconds, please.
revesting previously approved variance, I don't believe legally that's correct. If you're granting these today or denying them, you base them on the facts before you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next in line. Please state your name, address, and if you've been sworn.
Yes, David Healy, 4938 West Melrose Avenue South. I would just
and have you been sworn in?
Yes, I was sworn in.
That's the one everybody forgets. 3 minutes.
I would just say that we are all facing pretty much the same zoning, the same issues with water. We are at 4938, which is almost the identical lot. It's on the South Melrose portion, but it's at the end, faces the bay, has water on 2 sides, at the end of a cul-de-sac. We've gone through the same thing. We, because of a fire, had to rebuild our house in 2007. We then found out what a velocity zone is. We have breakaway walls underneath the first floor. We are well within the 35 feet. It's not necessary to go over. I would just ask that you realize that this is extremely precedent setting. This is not an exception. This isn't the 10 feet here or 5 feet over there. I've never been before you, never objected in the 25 years, I think, we've been on Melrose. I just wrote you a letter a couple months ago to approve one next door. Why? Because there's a notch in the seawall. They wanted to get closer to where that water is. Perfectly reasonable. I supported it. This is different. This is extreme. I would ask you to please deny this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Please state your name, address, and whether or not you've been sworn.
I'll take the last one first. I have not been sworn, so if you want
Okay. Is there anybody else that has not been sworn in that does wish to speak? No. Okay. So we'll take care of that for you. Mr. Burke.
Okay. Please stand, raise your right hand. Do you swear to and affirm that you will tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, and your name and address, please.
Hi, Greg Young, 4917 West Melrose Avenue North.
You got 3 minutes.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the panel for hearing our neighborhood's concerns and welcome Steve to the neighborhood. I have not had a chance to meet him yet. Just a few points, 3 points actually. No other homes in the neighborhood are 44 feet tall, so this is an exception. Also, this is not in harmony with the neighborhood. I think you saw a few pictures. You can see that no other homes are, exceed the zoning limitations and requirements. And with respect to the harmony, I think you have 9 opposition letters and a petition signed by the neighborhood members. And last, it's not clear what hardship Steve is facing. So I know that's one of the criteria that you evaluate. So I'd like to understand the hardship a little bit more clearly. And I think in a previous case, you said that I think flood insurance or expense was not a hardship. So just like to point that out. So in closing, I'd like to request denial of the variance, and that's all I have.
Thank you. Please state your name, address, and whether or not you've been sworn.
Courtney Anderson. I'm at 4940 West Melrose Ave North, and I have been sworn.
All right, you've got 3 minutes.
Well, it's similar to our neighbors. I just want to echo a lot of what they've said. I'll be brief. We have the petition representing more people than are here tonight. Of course, with COVID, there was a limited participation here this evening. But if you look around our neighborhood, including Culberth Isles, where multi-million-dollar homes.
Excuse me, sir. Hi, Kamaria Pettis-Malcolm from the legal department. If you could just scoot closer to the microphone so that your voice projects more.
But if you look at even the Culberth Isle neighborhood, gated community with multi-million-dollar homes, nobody is exceeding the 35 feet. And there have been many tear downs and new homes going in our area on our 2 streets. But again, no one has gone to that extent. And some of these homes are 6, 8, 9,000 square feet, and they're still doing it under the 35-foot umbrella. So, we just don't, of course, we came here this evening expecting a 52, which was 50% over the limit. But even at 44, it seems a little much. And as far as, again, the hardship, we're a part of that cul-de-sac with an irregularly shaped lot. But we did a renovation in '06, and we applied for no variances. Our home's not as big as some of the others, but again, there are large homes and comfortable homes being built within the limitations that are out there. I don't think we have significant opposition to the footprint variances, but certainly the height is something that just is incongruous with the neighborhood. And nothing is that tall, nothing is pushing the envelope. I don't know how the airport feels, but there is a flight path right over our house, so they come in pretty low for that one runway, but that's another consideration. Anyway, I'll yield to my neighbor.
Thank you.
May I?
Yes, name, address, and whether or not you've been sworn.
My name is Steve Shahal. I've been sworn in.
And your address?
4942 West Melrose Avenue North.
Okay, you got 3 minutes.
So I have this package here
To distribute? Oh, okay. Or are you just submitting it?
Good evening, distinguished members of the Variance Board. My name is Steve Shahal. I'm the property owner at 4942 West Melrose Avenue North, immediately adjacent to the subject property. I'm here before you today to vehemently object to the proposed height variance. The request is excessive and not based on hardship, but is a lifestyle choice. It will result in the applicant's house looming above all others, trumping every other house in the neighborhood, and towering like an odd one-off building in our midst. This height variance application will create an unsightly situation that will harm our entire neighborhood. This building structure will adversely affect the uniformity, harmony, and serenity of our neighborhood. I did a review of VRB cases where height variance was granted and denied going back to 2005. My research shows that only 2 building height variances were granted and no variances were for this drastic of a request. The denials far exceed the approvals. Again, the subject request of the 17-foot is excessive, for it would be an eyesore in the entire street, making this building like a one-off multi-family, multi-story building than a single-family home. Finally, I would like to point out that this application is defective on its face because the applicant failed to address any of the 5 criteria required to be considered by the VRB. Namely, he failed to address how his situation is unique. He failed to show how the requested variance is not the result of his own actions. He does not need to build a 4+ story house. He's simply choosing to do so. He failed to prove that the variance will not interfere with or harm others. He failed to demonstrate how the variance is in harmony with the city code and comprehensive plan. And he failed to illustrate how substantial justice will be done, considering the lack of any hardship shown by the applicant and the harm to be caused to me and my neighbors. Given all of the above, I respectfully request that the height variance be denied. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak on this application? Yes?
My name's Scott Garrissey. I live at 7010 211th Street East, Lakewood Ranch, Florida, 34211. I'm the architect.
And have you been sworn?
I have been sworn in. I'm the architect of record on the project.
Okay.
I just want to say 2 simple things. When I first met with Mariella and Scott, I was handed the survey that they received at closing, and it only showed AE9. Second thing, both Pinellas County and Hillsborough County measure the height for VE zone structure from the base flood elevation upward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board. A couple of things that I'd like to note is that the petition you've received.
Well, we're not in rebuttal yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're in questions.
I thought we were in rebuttal. Sorry.
So I have a question for Ms. Curry.
Yes.
Or Ms. Pettis, but probably Ms. Curry. Have there been any discussions at the city that you're aware of about reconciling flood elevation versus building height?
I am not aware of any discussions.
Okay. No and no. All right. Just wondering. Board questions, Mr. Farrell?
Steve, on your site plan, what's the finished ceiling height in the garage?
I think they are.
And I noticed is it a 5 or a 6 foot parapet on the top of that thing?
There is a parapet on the top of the roof, and the parapet is in keeping with the city code, not to exceed 5 feet.
But it is 5 feet?
Yes, sir.
And what's the height in the garage?
If you, Mr.
Scott, you're
Michelini,
gonna have to answer that.
if you could just put it on the, if you could put Kamaria Pettis Mecca from the
I'm not sure
legal.
it'll blow up.
Oh, okay. Well, we could, they could zoom in for you. And if staff can, there you go.
I'm sorry, guys.
Are you trying, you want it to be pulled down, correct?
It's 8'10" for the slab to the bottom of the
Of the wood truss?
wood trusses.
Okay. All right.
And that's approximately the 9 feet that we need in order to make up for the
For
flood
the
zone
breakaway,
elevation.
right?
That's
Okay.
the makeup distance.
All
And
right,
the
well,
remainder is the 35 feet that others have been asking about.
Okay. And the floor heights inside are,
12 feet and 10 feet, 12 on the first living area and 10 on the second living area.
all right, I'm sorry, just trying to look and see if there might be some internal
Well, we
measurements.
we
but
squeezed
I
it.
don't really think you can.
You know, we squeezed the elevation so that what we were trying to do was to show that the living area was actually the 35 feet, and then we were making up for the flood zone elevation out of the garage area, which was, it's +6 plus the 9, which is, you know, the 15 feet.
Thank you.
Mr. Feldman, do you have questions?
I do have a couple. One of them is fairly similar to Mr. Pastor's question. I'm just going to ask it a little differently. How, and this, I think this is for legal, but feel free to kick it over to Ms. Mead-Curry if you think it's more her issue, but how does the city address FEMA requirements, and does the current height limit consider flood levels as they exist?
So Kamaria Pettis-Mackel, for the record, I think that is something that staff can answer that question.
Okay, Brett, if you don't mind, can you repeat the question, please?
Sure, Brett Feldman. How does the city, in its current height limitations, how does it address flood level FEMA requirements? And does the current height limitation consider those flood levels?
Considered a flood zone?
Yeah.
Okay, the flood zone maps, again, are determined by FEMA, and as he demonstrated from the letter from Dave Jennings, the new code is not going to be adopted until January 2021. So the current code is the 9 feet BFE. Let me see if I can find that letter, because I have that letter as well.
I have it if you want it.
Yeah, that's fine.
You want me to put it up?
Yeah, go ahead, put it up so that she can reference it if need be.
So you see the current flood zone is VE-9, which is the design flood elevation. That's what the D stands for, design flood elevation, is elevation 10 feet, which includes what we call that waterboard. And I think Dustin and David, you would understand what that waterboarding is, or that extra foot or so. So that's what's included in the current flood zone. So that's what they would have to build to currently.
Right, so the first floor is not living space. It would be.
It can be,
correct.
as long as it's sacrificial.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's not your question, right? Your question is, does the code address that?
Yes.
In relation to building height? Does it tie building height in any way to the flood plain?
It does not.
Okay.
Zoning code states it should be a certain height. It is not reflective of or alter anything to the FEMA regulations.
All right, and then I think this question, this may just be me being extra cautious. It may have been addressed previously, but applicant said the existing grade will be 6 feet. You're measuring height from that 6 feet going up, so it will be 35 feet from the 6 foot existing grade, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Follow-up comment, because you probably don't have the answer, but I wonder if, it'd be interesting to know if that 35-foot height limit existed before flood minimums were in place, wouldn't it?
Excellent question.
Okay. I don't think we have an answer to that question. More questions on this side?
I don't want to address height, so if I have questions that don't address height, so if
Okay.
we want to have other questions that do, let's do that.
Ms. Hurtak?
Lynn Hurtak. I do, and again, I am not an architect, so I'm guessing, and the design was taken off the screen, so I only have this really little one on my screen. It's kind of fuzzy.
Are you looking for the elevation, or?
Yes, the elevation that was up earlier, if you don't mind. Thank you so much. That's so much clearer than the one I have. So maybe you or the architect can answer this question for me. These floor trusses, is there a reason? It looks to me like if I'm looking at this bottom structure, 8 foot 10 inches, and then a 3 foot 1 inch, and I think that goes with the floor truss. Is there a reason that that has to be so high? Again, I'm not an architect, so I'm hoping that you can just shed some light on that.
Well, thank you for that question. This is Scott Garrissey again.
Can you get a little closer to the mic for me?
The conventional way that floor framing happens nowadays is called a flat back floor truss, and it's 2x4s that do this, and there are openings in between the web members for ductwork and plumbing to pass through. The minimum for conventional framing is about 16 inches deep. With our spans from front to back and with cantilevers sticking out the back towards the water, 24 inches is a best guess case for what that thickness will be. That floor truss bears on top of and goes over top of to allow the cantilever over the structural beam. The FEMA measurement is from the bottom of that beam. So those things kind of add up together to get that 3 feet 1.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that it sounds like you're saying that's a FEMA requirement, but I don't think I heard that right.
Yeah, the way the VE measures, they set their minimum, VE 15. Then you add 12 inches of freeboard to that. So we're at 16 above sea level. That 16-foot limit is, we can't set any structural elements below that point.
Okay.
So that's our starting point to go up from there.
Okay.
To achieve a cantilever, it's got to be this kind of a condition versus this.
So I see this line that says bottom of lowest structural member, but yet I don't see a structural member there. It looks like it's up a few inches.
It's the rectangle with the square.
Yes, and that does not look like it is on the line of the bottom
No,
of
look
the
at that
lowest.
one that he's pointing at right now.
Oh, okay, it's that one. Okay. So that is 24 inches, that little X?
No, that is probably about,
It's
that's
showing,
probably 16.
Okay, so where does the extra come from?
This is the floor truss with a scabbed-on piece of wood that achieves that cantilever. So this is the thickness of the floor truss, which actually looks like that.
Okay, but what's below that goes to the dotted line is, sorry.
That's space.
Okay, so why
No,
it
just
doesn't
point
look-
to the beam again, the one that we just pointed at. With
Yeah, the little X.
No,
This is the-
Yeah,
that's
right
the
there.
one.
that's the end of the other beam running across.
Yeah, that's the header over the garage.
That's the low
opening.
point of the structure.
Okay, so you can't bring it any lower is really what it comes down to.
Exactly.
Okay, and so the same thing for the one above it? That just has to be there because of the length of the building?
Where are we talking about?
Between the upper and lower levels?
Here?
Yeah. No, just a little above that. So the floor truss again.
That one.
Same thing, the 2 foot, same issue.
Yeah, that's a logical guess as to what the depth of the floor trusses will be.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you walking me through that.
Chairman, can I see where that 44 feet is at again, please, Steve? Because I don't have that drawing that gives me that 44
You
foot
just need to
dimension.
zoom it out.
Can you pull it down some and,
It has to be zoomed out.
You got to zoom it out. Whoever's in charge of the zooming. There.
so the 44 feet is actually to the parapet wall. So what
Right.
is the distance from the existing grade to the top of the finished roof?
Looks like
I
3
think-
foot 6 on the parapet.
Yeah, it's 5'6" on the, is that 5'6"?
3.6,
It's down
it appears.
3'6".
So it would be 44 feet minus 3 feet 6 would be your real ask.
40 feet, 6 inches,
Is that what,
right?
is that what your ask is this evening? Because that's what we don't know.
No, we asked for the 44 feet, but you're only looking at one side of the building. We need 44 or we need 30, 40.6.
44 is to the top of the parapet.
What do we need for the variance?
Are you, Ms. Curry, are you saying that the parapet does not count into the height?
Correct.
Okay, as long as it meets its 5 foot or less.
Yeah, the parapet doesn't constitute finished roof. Top of the finished roof, top of the finished membrane that's on the flat roof, or top of the finished roof peak
So the
shingles
question
with
would
it.
be, is there any other structure in the building other than this one section that goes up to the height of that parapet, or is it a parapet all the way around?
There's nothing else inside the building. There's HVAC is roof mounted. That doesn't count. So according to the architect, we're really at about 41 or 40.5.
Okay.
40 feet 6 inches, or you know, if you remove the accommodation for the parapet.
Wait, Lynn Hertak, so what that would basically do is change that 9-foot flood elevation to the 16-foot, which would basically add 7 feet. And so what you're asking for is 5.5 feet over instead of 7.
Instead of the 17, that's correct.
Yeah, but instead of 7. I mean, I'm looking at it from, say
Right.
we're starting at 16 feet, like the new FEMA elevation.
Right.
So you're still asking lower. And am I making sense?
We're at about 5.5 feet above the 35 feet.
Okay.
You're on the right track. You know, once we take out the parapet.
Okay, so, thank you. I think you've answered my question, at least in my mind.
But you've already got 6 feet because your base elevation is already 6 feet above
Correct.
sea level. So you've got 6 feet on the base elevation.
Correct.
You've got another 8.5 in the ground floor, you said?
It's 810. It's 810 on the ground garage level.
So that's, they're already 14
Well, it's
feet.
not as clean as you'd like, Brett, because it says the finished grade looks like 6 foot, 6.8 feet or something, but the first floor of the garage is above that a little bit. You can see how the land's sloping. So the point is, they're trying to hit 16 feet from the sea level to the bottom of the lowest structure, which
Kamaria,
is roughly 10 feet off the ground.
Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the legal department. May we please have a brief recess for 5 minutes, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Recess.
I have it.
Okay.
Everyone ready? Okay, of the letters received, there was 9 letters. 6 letters specifically address the height, that they're objecting to the height. The other 3 letters, along with the 23 signatures on the petition, address the height, but also say that the applicant has failed to meet the hardships.
Okay. Pretty sure we were still in the middle of questions, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have some? You
I
did.
had
Mr.
I had
Feldman?
one more, and I don't want to open a big can of worms, but since the home has been demolished, Mr. McLean, I want to understand, just want to make sure that you're stating for the record the basis of the setback hardships, because I don't think you can rely upon a 1993 granted variance when the home is demolished. So I just want to understand what, you've said this, you said the unusual shape of the parcel, and I understand that.
Yes, sir. The previous variance, to my knowledge, would carry over for a 1-story home. It would not carry over for multiple stories.
Right.
And so that is the reason why we're requesting that variance to be extended vertically.
Okay. Does the new home sit within the footprint of the home that was demolished?
Not exactly. It sits.
Well, let me ask it a different way, and maybe this will help. Does it sit any closer to the setbacks that you're requesting than what existed before it was demolished?
No, sir. No, sir. It sits within the basic design footprint that was previously there. The shape of the structure has changed, but the footprint is still, basically meets the same setbacks that were previously approved.
Okay. And I don't want to, because the home has been demolished, I don't want to rely upon that. I just want to make sure that you're stating for the record the basis of those hardships, and I want to give you the opportunity to do that so that it's on the record.
Yes, sir. I wasn't involved in that first variance.
Don't care about the 1993. Don't care about it. I want to understand the setbacks for the current request.
What we've done is this back on?
Yes.
What we've done is to match the arc of the cul-de-sac, which is what the other property owners in the cul-de-sac have done. If you applied the 25-foot setback, it would be out here in the middle of the structure, which would significantly reduce the building footprint that would be allowable. And with respect to the side yard setback, or actually the rear yard setback here at 20 feet, we have 2 rears. We have a rear on the canal here, and we have a rear over here. So we're meeting it here with this kind of unusual cutout. And
we're gonna have to blow it up so that we can see the report, or you can slide it forward. Okay, so you've got that cutout issue.
No, actually, if you could just zoom out.
Yeah,
Zoom out.
See the whole thing.
Thank you.
There we go. We have this unusual cutout on the north side, north side. But on this side, so we're meeting the 20 feet here, and then on this side, we were also requesting that be reestablished as a 20-foot setback off of this hardened seawall. There is no other neighbor over here that would be adversely affected, which typically, that's what that setback is there to do, is to protect an adjacent property owner. In this case, adjacent property is Tampa Bay. So when we pushed this structure back away from the cul-de-sac, granted, there is a variance here, but you still have a very narrow neck here when you follow that arc all the way around. And we only have, I think this is only, even at 14 feet, there's only about 30 feet, 25 feet for this garage, plus this storage room.
Do you happen to know what the neighbor to the south, what their setback from the rear is on the
The
west
south,
side?
over here. I don't know, but it, I don't know. I don't think it's any closer or any further away. I think when I was out there,
Well, actually, if you don't mind, I think we have the neighbor here, so maybe I can ask that gentleman.
if he knows what.
I did not ask for any setback change. It's still 20. I'm at the.
Oh, you're at 20
I'm
from
exactly at 20
okay.
feet, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Kamaria Pettis-Mackle from the City Attorney's Office, can the person who just spoke, and I understand.
That was my fault, I'm sorry.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
Can you
I'm so
state your
Sorry.
name
My name is Steve Shahal. I'm the neighbor to the south,
and you've been.
adjacent, yes. Thank you, and I've been sworn in. Thank you.
Board, I have the variance map up on the screen if you want to reference it.
Yes, please. Have to zoom that in, please. Zoom that in, please, to the red outlined property and the one to the south. We're getting there. Okay. And that looks like the previous house there in that picture too. Mr. Feldman, any more questions?
No further questions.
Any other board members, any other questions? Seeing none, we've got 3 minutes for rebuttal.
Well, one of my points is that that setback existed, whether it was a single story or a multi-story on that side, and so it didn't create an additional impact on the neighbor to the south. With respect to the inconsistencies regarding the project, there was a supplemental hardship and practical difficulty narrative that was submitted to augment what was previously, or at least what was originally submitted. One of the other statements was that the other houses were in the area were single story, and therefore this to a multi-story structure was not compatible. Well, the homes were built earlier, and they were built before we had FEMA codes and before we experienced extreme changes in land use values and a variety of other things. The city, under its current code, does not have an allowance for flood zone elevations. What they do is they tell you to, if you like, to mound up on the sides of the building, which you've seen a lot of that on Davis Island, and then the freeboard actually comes up way up high, and then they cut the garage down, which is another method of achieving that. But I mean, our strategy was simply to look at what was going to be needed and to elevate the garage, use the 6 feet that we already had, and request that now it's less than 9 feet. It's 40.6 feet to the top of the roof, which incorporates the garage, the FEMA regulations at an additional 9 feet. We've absorbed all of that, which is fairly nominal, at least considering what we could have been faced with, and the fact that the city is going to be implementing a new code here, where you can't even, get a legitimate plan approved without addressing it in some manner. But the new code will address that. We're hamstrung now between the timing of, October versus January, and trying to get these plans completed. New rules and new regulations apply, and when they apply, they have consequences. They affect how you design and how you build homes. Every one of these homes, if you add an addition, I think those of you on the board who are aware of this, if you add an addition that's in excess of 50% of the value, you have to meet that code. And in some cases, there are extreme measures where you have to jack the house up and put piers underneath it. So there aren't simple solutions. But I think that we have come to the point where we have requested a nominal increase of
Give you 30 more seconds.
basically, an additional from 35 to 40.6, which is not an extreme measure. It's not going to create a monstrosity and will not interfere with the rights of others. I think that we have demonstrated conclusively that we've met the hardship and practical difficulties, none of which were created by the owner.
Okay. So to be clear, before we close the public part of the hearing, would you like your request to be 52 feet, 44 feet, 40.5 feet, or 41 feet?
40.5 feet.
Okay.
For the height.
For the height. All right. Well then, without objection, we will close the public hearing and open it up for a motion or board discussion. Assuming that there's nobody jumping to get on the motions, I just would say that.
I just want to throw out there kind of my personal take on it at this point.
And if you could just please state your name for the record.
I'm sorry, David Farrell. I think the neighborhood recognizes at large that progress is coming to this neighborhood, and that that affords certain things to people that have been there for a long time. And I'm a firm believer in consistency of neighborhoods. I do think that the applicant has shown, as far as the side yard setbacks and the rear yard setbacks, I think they've probably shown a pretty adequate case that it is a difficult site to do, and it's a large, expensive site and warrants a large, expensive home. But at the end of the day, everybody has to play within those height rules. And so I just think if you're within 48 inches, 60 inches now of getting where you need to be, I would hope that maybe the applicant would consider moving forward on a couple of the variances and maybe continuing to see if there couldn't be a design element change that would get them where they need to be as homeowners and satisfy their neighbors.
Yeah, I think I take a different approach. I think that that's kind of kicking the can in the sense that from a very, very practical standpoint, if you're allowed as a Tampa resident to have 35 feet of house and a certain footprint to go with that house based on your property and setbacks, that gives you an allowable buildable area of house.
Agreed.
Now, when the federal government takes away some of that height and essentially up to one level of your house, they're reducing your square footage. And either, we can agree with that, okay, well now they've lost one floor of house that they previously had a right to build, or we can say that practically that right maybe should still exist and you should still have the right to build 35 feet of house because you don't create the flood, codes, and maybe it was applied before flood codes even existed. But we don't know that for sure. But that's my practical standpoint. Many jurisdictions, including ones around this area, start your height measurement at the allowable flood plain, not at the ground. So it's not like this is a new thing.
No.
It's being done elsewhere. So, I understand that the vast majority of the immediate neighborhood is opposed to this, but I think that they should also consider that, let's say that they push this even further and made it the city code that the floodplain would not be taken into consideration, they would effectively be reducing the buildable area of all of their lots and their resale value, because now anybody that buys their house and redevelops has to meet that 35 feet. And when the flood elevation goes up to 20 feet in 5 years from now, or whatever happens, now you're down to 15 feet. So, things to consider. To say that, to take 5 feet out of it right now just to meet this old code that's not responsive to the current climate just means that in 5 years from now, somebody else is going to be sitting on this board, and that number is going to have gone up, and they're going to be discussing this yet again. So, I understand the situation. And I am an architect, so maybe I have a different view than others, but your allowable area is defined by your footprint and your height. And to cut 40% out of that height, 16 feet, is, probably, to me, not practical. It's a practical difficulty. So that's where I stand. Is there anybody that wants to make a motion or discuss further?
I have a couple things to say, but I'm also happy to make a motion. Would it make sense, and I think we've done this before, to make a motion for maybe the setbacks and then make a separate motion or have further discussion and make a motion for the height issue?
You can bifurcate if you feel like that would be a successful measure.
Okay.
See, before you bifurcate and go through the trouble, you might want to consider whether whatever motion, I don't know what your motion is, but you might want to consider whether your motion could be voted upon in full.
Well,
unless you intend to approve one part and deny another.
I do intend to do that. So maybe instead of making a motion, I will just say a couple comments in response to the things that the other board members have said. So Mr. Pastor, I understand the issue that you're raising, and I think it's an important issue because I think that it goes and is perhaps something that should be taken up by the city council or whoever designates the zoning codes. I'm not sure that it's our position or our job to change what is essentially the current code because
well, it is our position to weigh on the hardship.
And to that end, I don't see this as being unique or singular to the property. In fact, it seems like it applies to everyone in the neighborhood. I think one of the neighbors made that exact point, is that moving forward, all of the neighbors are going to be subject to this 35-foot height restriction, less the above sea level. So I'm not inclined to support the height variance because I don't see it as unique or singular to the property. I also see this as somewhat of a self-created hardship, while the applicant didn't necessarily. Well, I guess they designed a house that was more than 35 feet, and even taking your point into consideration, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Even taking your point into consideration, they purchased this property apparently with the intent to tear it down and rebuild it. So I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around how this isn't also a self-created hardship. But on the other end, it sounds like, based on what I've heard, the applicant could, in theory, just build a bunch of land and then build 35 feet on top of that, which would essentially make their house that's not correct?
Well, you sink it. You have to drop it, and you have to bury it to create the height, so you created a lower elevation in the garage, so that, for instance, when you walk in, because it's not at base flood elevation, your electrical outlet's way up on the top of the wall, because it meets electrical, but dropping ground to get around that is a common method used by builders to address the situation.
Yeah, so what you're proposing is essentially skirting the code entirely with a loophole.
And I'm saying that was a possibility that the applicants didn't take. So,
Yeah, and they address that out of respect for the fact that it's a loophole and that they get just as much protest.
Yep. And so, to that end,
Lynn Hertak. Oh, I'm sorry.
Nope, I'm done.
Lynn Hertak. I think I'm just going to echo what I think I'm hearing a lot of the board saying, is that we don't. Well, maybe the board isn't saying this, but I'm going to say it. I think I want the city to give us a little more guidance, and I think that's probably what's coming, but that's not what's in front of us right now. What's in front of us is what we see, and we know this is coming, and we know that the FEMA regulations are changing. And that email, if that email didn't exist, I think this conversation would be very different. But knowing that it's going to be 16 feet in 3.5 months, I don't know how, even if this wasn't a large house on a body of water, I don't know how you would want to build a house that wouldn't meet the current code in terms of FEMA. I mean, allowing that water to go through is really important, especially in the current climate. I just don't see how not allowing this 5.5 feet would impact the neighbors to such a degree. I think this is a good compromise, and I support it.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out to Ms. Walker that all of the neighbors that said that they haven't needed that variance, they didn't have a 16-foot requirement. A lot of them probably didn't have a requirement at all. And if they were to rebuild right now, a lot of them would probably be here asking for a similar variance because they would have to meet it. So using the position of somebody that doesn't have to address this issue because they're in an existing home is not really a fair argument for the question of hardship. That hardship did not exist for the current neighbors. They had a hardship at a different height. So to me, 100%, a hardship created by the government on land that's existed for 100 years is not self-created. Now, the design certainly is, but the height limit exists by the city. The flood limit exists by the federal government. We're asking them to fit the house into that box. That box is smaller than everybody else's houses was allowed to be because of the flood limit. So to me, that's a hardship. I just wanted to explain that to you before we take a vote.
Kamaria Pettis-Mackle from the City Attorney's Office. During your discussions, you are, discussing about Commissioner Hertek had asked, for additional guidance from the city. City Council has not made the final decision regarding these revisions, so I'd encourage the board not to anticipate or base your vote based on what could happen. So I'd ask you to just present, base your decision on what the evidence that is submitted on the record and what you've been presented today, and not on potentially what could happen in the future.
Right, based on the hardship, probably one way or the other, it will get to appeal and city council can weigh in on it themselves. Who would like to pose a motion?
I think Ms. Hertek made a great suggestion to bifurcate.
No, that wasn't me, that was
Oh,
Ms.
that
Walker.
was
That was Ms. Walker.
Ms. Smith-Walker, right?
Okay, then I will make a motion. Do I have to make a motion to bifurcate?
You could just bifurcate your
Okay.
motion.
All right. I move that the variance request for case VRB 20-52 for property located at 4941 West Melrose Avenue North be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing with respect to maintenance of a reduction of the west rear yard from 20 feet to 14 feet and reduction of the front yard from 25 feet to 16.1 feet. As depicted on the site plan presented with encroachments for use in gutters based on the applicant submitting competent and presenting competent and substantial evidence in the record and at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria as set forth in section 27-80 of the city code, specifically that the hardship or practical difficulty is in harmony and serves the general purpose of the chapter. This is evidenced by the fact that there are other houses in the neighborhood that have been granted similar variances, and in fact, this exact property has been granted a variance for the exact same setbacks. Additionally, allowing the variance will result in substantial justice being done because, but for the larger setbacks, the house would have to be reduced substantially.
Would you accept a minor amendment to that based, and that was a tough one, by the way. This is Brett Feldman. The shape of the property, the unusual shape of the property, and that cutout in the back for the seawall seem to impact the hardships that you're addressing. And so I would ask that with that amendment, that the shape of the property supports those hardships. I would second it. If you would accept that.
I do accept that amendment.
Seconded by Mr. Feldman. And a vote, please.
Sam Walker, aye.
Lynn Hurtak, aye.
Dustin Pastor, aye.
Brett Feldman, aye.
David Farrell, aye.
Okay, the setbacks are approved 5-0. Would you like to continue?
Sure. I move that the variance request for case VRB 20-52 for the property located at 4941 West Melrose Avenue North for a increase in the allowable height from 35 feet to 40.5 feet be denied due to the failure of the petitioner to meet its burden of proof to provide competent and substantial evidence in the record and at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria as set forth in section 27-80 of the city code. Specifically that this hardship or practical difficulty does result in from the actions of the applicant. Additionally, the hardship criteria is not unique or singular to this property. It'll affect all of the properties in Tampa from and after January of 2021. And additionally, the variance, if granted, will the variance is also not in harmony with the general neighborhood, as none of the other houses are subject to a 30, or all of the other houses are subject to a 35-foot height cap.
Is there a second?
I will second it. Brett Feldman, second.
Okay. And a vote.
Sam Walker, aye.
Lynn Hurtak, nay.
Dustin Pastor, nay.
Brett Feldman, aye.
David Farrell, aye.
So based on the vote 3-2, the motion to deny the variance for the increase in height from 35 to 40.5 was denied.
Thank you, board.
Okay, you have the right to appeal 10 days from the written decision to City Council. I'm sure you're aware of the process.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any further business from staff?
Ms. Mead.
Any further
Still on the
business from
agenda.
staff?
No, it's to staff.
Your microphone's not on yet. Is there any further business? Okay.
Lean into it.
The cases for
Any further business?
November are 9 cases, and December has 13 cases.
Didn't we add one tonight to
Yep,
November?
it's going to be 10. There was a
We-
continuance.
There was one tonight, sorry, 10 for
Okay.
November.
All right. And with that, we'll close the hearing.